Hey everyone, Nigel and Luke here, and welcome to Crime Zone. Authorities in Louisiana say that a former sheriff's office employee is facing serious charges after investigators say he spied on his ex-girlfriend through her own home security system. Police identified the suspect as 33-year-old Min No, who until recently worked for the St. Mary Parish Sheriff's Office. According to a news release, the unidentified female victim reported the allegations on September 11th, telling investigators that No had helped install surveillance cameras in her home while they were dating, but continued accessing them after their breakup. Detectives found evidence that No had been logging into the system regularly for at least the last 4 months, monitoring her inside her residence without her knowledge. The case was referred to the Ascension Parish Sheriff's Office, which took over the investigation since that's where the alleged crimes occurred. On September 16th, No was arrested on charges of video voyeurism, computer tampering, and stalking. He was immediately terminated from his position with the St. Mary Parish Sheriff's Office. Sheriff Gary Driscoll released a statement acknowledging the arrest, saying, quote, "The St. Mary Parish Sheriff's Office exists to uphold the law, and no one is above the law, not even those who wear our badge. While it is never easy to arrest one of our own, it is necessary in order to maintain the trust of the citizens we serve. We will continue to hold ourselves to the highest standards of accountability and integrity." No remains in custody as the case moves forward, and investigators say the probe is ongoing. An off-duty Florida police officer was brutally murdered inside of a gas station convenience store this week in what investigators are calling one of the most cold-blooded acts they've ever seen. The victim has been identified as 45-year-old David Jewell, a father and officer with the Edgewater Police Department. According to the Volusia County Sheriff's Office, David was inside a Circle K store in the community of Ormond-by-the-Sea on September 15th when an employee, 24-year-old Eduardo Labrada Machado, pulled out a handgun and opened fire. According to reports, chilling surveillance footage shows Machado first leaving the store after David walked in, retrieving a jacket from his car and then returning. With a gun hidden under the jacket, Machado walked up behind David and shot him in the head multiple times at close range. Even after David collapsed, Machado continued firing. In all, 24 rounds were discharged from 2 magazines. Volusia County Sheriff Mike Chitwood told reporters, quote, "In 38 years of policing as a homicide detective, to watch the evil and the calculatingness of what he did to Officer Jewell, you cannot describe it." Investigators say Machado confessed afterwards, offering a chilling excuse for his actions. He told them that he had been, quote, "having a bad day and had thought about shooting David earlier that morning on his way to work." He reportedly told officers he had seen David in the store before and was afraid of him, though it's unclear if he knew he was a police officer. The murder weapon, a Glock 20 pistol Machado had legally purchased just 10 days earlier, was later found in his vehicle. Surveillance footage also showed Machado changing his shirt and returning the jacket to his car after the shooting. David had stopped at the store with his father-in-law, who waited outside in the car. After hearing gunfire and realizing something was wrong, he phoned David's wife. Sheriff Chitwood said the officer's widow, a former dispatcher, turned on a police radio and tragically listened live as her husband's death was confirmed. Another Circle K employee was inside the building when the shooting took place. They later told 911 dispatchers they had no idea what had happened, only that there was, quote, "a dead body on the floor." David had served as a police officer for 2 years in Edgewater after previous roles with the Volusia County Sheriff's Office and the Lake Helen Police Department. He leaves behind his wife, son, and father-in-law, all of whom relied on him financially. A GoFundMe set up by fellow officers has already raised tens of thousands of dollars for his family. The fundraiser states in part, quote, "To honor his service and support his family during this devastating time, we are raising funds to provide ongoing care for his wife, father-in-law, and son, as David was their sole provider." Meanwhile, Machado appeared in court Tuesday, where a judge denied him release on a $1 million bond. He has been charged with first-degree murder and remains in custody. Sheriff Chitwood described the case as nothing short of an execution carried out by a man who, in his words, embodied pure evil. A suburban Chicago community is in mourning this week after a shocking crime outside a middle school took the lives of an educator and her elderly mother. The horrifying incident unfolded on the afternoon of Tuesday, September 16th at Lincoln Middle School in the city of Berwyn. According to reports, the school's 46-year-old assistant principal, Narissa Lee, was with her 76-year-old mother. It was around 4 p.m., so the school day was already over, and the two women were outside together in a car, when suddenly Narissa's husband, Stephen T. Lee, pulled up beside them in his own vehicle. He was armed with a rifle and opened fire seconds later before either of the women had time to react. Responding officers rushed to the scene, at which point Lee fired at them as well. He then turned his weapon on himself, dying from a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head. Lee was later identified by the Cook County Medical Examiner's Office as one of the deceased. Witnesses described the chaos, with one resident saying she heard nearly 24 gunshots. Disturbing video from the scene showed blood on the sidewalk between two vehicles as the area was taped off by investigators. Family members of the victims told NBC Chicago that Narissa and Lee's marriage had been deteriorating since June, with Narissa's sister stating that the crime, quote, didn't come out of the blue. She told reporters, quote, basically, the boiling point would have been Tuesday. It's a horrible thing. I have a lot of emotions. I don't quite know what to feel. The double murder has devastated Berwyn, a city previously ranked among the safest mid-sized communities in America. Flowers and handwritten notes have since filled a growing memorial outside the school as students and neighbors struggle to process the loss. Former students remembered Narissa as a dedicated and compassionate educator. 16-year-old Haley Bedoy told the Chicago Sun-Times that she had a, quote, bubbly personality and always invested in her students. Another former student, Hannah Zuniga, recalled bonding with Narissa over music, saying she was always willing to talk and support students through hard times. Community members echoed that sentiment, remembering Narissa as a teacher who gave food to hungry students and always looked out for children in her care. One former student described her as a very kind person who should be remembered for the positive impact she left behind. At the time of this recording, the case is still under investigation, and authorities are working to piece together what happened in the lead-up to the deadly incident. Authorities in California have released a major update in a shocking case that we covered just last week after a badly decomposed body was discovered inside a Tesla sedan registered to an up-and-coming singer known as David. If you'll recall, the case began back on September 8th when workers at Hollywood Tow noticed a foul odor coming from a vehicle parked at their lot in the Hollywood Hills. The car in question was a Tesla that had been abandoned for days and later towed from the area. When officers arrived and opened the front trunk, they made a horrifying discovery. Inside of a plastic-wrapped bag were the dismembered and heavily decomposed remains of what was initially believed to be a woman. However, authorities now say the victim was just 15 years old at the time of her death. The Los Angeles County Medical Examiner has now identified her as Celeste Rivas Hernandez. Disturbingly, the teen has been missing from Lake Elsinore since at least April of 2024. At the time she vanished, Celeste was only 13 years old. Missing persons flyers circulated back then showed the young teen with long dark hair and a petite frame. According to investigators, when her body was found, she was wearing a tube top, black leggings, and a yellow bracelet, with stud earrings still in place. Disturbingly, she also had a tattoo on her right index finger that read, "Shh," a design similar to one that David has, though it's worth noting that the tattoo is apparently not all that unique. When news first broke about the grisly discovery, a spokesperson for David, whose real name is David Anthony Burke, told reporters that the 20-year-old was cooperating with authorities. At the time, the artist was preparing for a show in Minneapolis, posting to his 2 million Instagram followers as if nothing was wrong. Since then, though, the fallout has been swift. Burke has canceled his U.S. tour dates, including a planned Los Angeles concert and an appearance at the Grammy Museum. Crocs and Hollister also pulled him from campaigns just days after announcing him as the face of new collaborations. Meanwhile, investigators continue to look closely at possible links between the singer and Celeste. Around the time she disappeared, there were rumors online that Burke had been dating a girl named Celeste. Screenshots from fan chat rooms in 2023 seem to show those claims spreading amongst followers. Even more chilling, an unreleased song by the artist began resurfacing online after Celeste's body was identified. In the track, Burke sings, quote, "Oh Celeste, the girl with my name tattooed on her chest, smell her on my clothes like cigarettes." Police have also searched a Hollywood Hills house where Burke had reportedly been staying. According to local media, detectives were seen leaving the property with evidence bags and electronics. Officials later confirmed that multiple items were seized and will be analyzed in the coming days. Despite the disturbing details, no suspects have been publicly named, and police have not yet charged Burke or anyone else in connection with Celeste's death. The Los Angeles County Medical Examiner is also still working to determine the teen's cause of death. For her family, the identification brought both heartbreak and grim confirmation. Celeste's mother told reporters she immediately suspected it was her daughter when news broke of a body being found in the Tesla. Loved ones have since launched a GoFundMe campaign to raise money for her funeral, remembering her as a kind young girl whose life was cut far too short. At the time of this recording, the case remains under active investigation. A renowned Bay Area chef is now facing serious charges after police say he carried out 3 separate bank robberies in a single day. On September 10th, officers responded to a bank near Grant Avenue in San Francisco's Chinatown neighborhood just after noon, when a teller reported being handed a note demanding money. Fearing for her safety, she complied, and the suspect fled with an unspecified amount of cash. Investigators quickly tied the same man to 2 more heists that same day, both in the same general area. In each case, the robber used nearly identical methods, passing handwritten notes to bank staff before escaping on foot. By the afternoon, detectives had identified the suspect as 62-year-old Valentino Luchin of San Francisco. He was arrested later that day without incident and booked into the county jail on 2 counts of robbery and 1 count of attempted robbery. His bail has been set at $200,000. The case drew added attention because Luchin is not an unknown figure. Born in Italy's Veneto region, he immigrated to the U.S. in the 1990s and rose to prominence as a chef, serving as executive chef at the celebrated Rosé Pistola in San Francisco, and later running his own restaurant, Ottavio, in Walnut Creek. When Ottavio closed in 2016, though, Luchin's financial troubles mounted. Bankruptcy records from 2015 show the chef and his wife were more than $111,000 in debt. Strangely enough, this also allegedly isn't Luchin's first foray into bank robbery. In 2018, police in Orinda, California, arrested him after $18,000 was stolen from a Citibank. At the time, security cameras showed a hooded man in sunglasses and gloves carrying what appeared to be a gun. Luchin later admitted in a jailhouse interview following his arrest that the weapon was a BB gun and described his actions as the product of desperation. At the time, he said, quote, "Desperation leads you to do things you never thought you were capable of." Despite his earlier claims of remorse, though, prosecutors say Luchin returned to the exact same crime years later. For now, he remains behind bars, awaiting formal charges for the 3 San Francisco robberies. Representatives from the New Hampshire Department of Justice say that 1 person is dead and several others have been left wounded this week following a disturbing act of violence at a busy country club. The incident began shortly before 7:30 p.m. on December 20th at the Sky Meadow Country Club in Nashua. According to reports, it was a busy Saturday night there, and at least one event was being hosted at the property, when suddenly things were plunged into chaos. It happened when a man, later identified as 23-year-old Hunter Nadeau, walked into the club's dining room with a gun and opened fire. The shooting immediately caused a panic, sending people running for their lives. Adding to the confusion was the fact that a wedding was being held right next door at a restaurant on the property where hundreds of people were dancing. And while the vast majority of people managed to make it to safety, sadly, a few were not so lucky. At least 3 people were shot during the attack, while several others sustained minor injuries as they ran for their lives. It appears that 2 of the shooting victims were able to be saved, though one man tragically died from his injuries. He has since been identified as 59-year-old Robert de Cesar. Robert was reportedly eating with his wife and daughter at the time of the attack and was killed while shielding them from the gunman. Police later announced that Hunter Nadeau was taken into custody immediately after the shooting and has now been charged with second-degree murder in connection with the deadly incident. However, they stated that more charges are likely to follow. As for the motive behind the crime, that's still being sorted out, though it appears there are some conflicting reports. Several news outlets quoted witnesses who said that they heard Nadeau yelling, quote, "The children are safe," and "Free Palestine" during the attack. And while this does appear to be true, police have stated this is only part of the story. They say that Nadeau was yelling other unconnected phrases during the shooting, with Attorney General John Formella later telling reporters, quote, "At this point, the evidence leads us to believe it was more likely that Mr. Nadeau was simply trying to make a number of statements to create chaos in the moment. At this point, we don't have any evidence to indicate that this was a hate-based act." Formella also noted that Nadeau has a prior connection to the Sky Meadow Country Club and was formerly employed there. Currently, authorities say they believe this was a targeted attack, though have not specified who the intended target or targets were. Right now, there was no known connection between Nadeau and Robert de Cesar. Any way you slice it, though, the deadly shooting was a tragedy. Friends and family members of Robert say that he was a great guy, adding that the loss is especially hard because his daughter is supposed to be getting married in just 6 weeks. At the time of this recording, Hunter Nadeau remains in custody and the investigation continues. Officials in Pennsylvania say that 3 police officers were killed and 2 others were critically wounded this week during what authorities describe as a brutal ambush at a York County farm. The fallen officers were identified as 39-year-old Detective Sergeant Cody Becker, 43-year-old Detective Isaiah Emmenheiser, and 53-year-old Detective Mark Baker. Another Northern York County regional detective and a York County sheriff's deputy remain hospitalized but in stable condition. Officials say the gunman was 24-year-old Matthew James Ruth, who was killed during a final exchange of gunfire with police. The confrontation stemmed from a stalking and trespassing investigation that began late Tuesday night, September 16th. Ruth's ex-girlfriend's mother had reported seeing him outside her home in camouflage, peering through her windows with binoculars. Trail camera photos captured him armed with a rifle, and his truck was found nearby. By the next day, detectives had obtained a warrant and searched Ruth's home before heading to a farm on Har Road. Around 2:08 p.m., 4 detectives approached the unlocked front door of a farmhouse there. Almost immediately, Ruth opened fire with multiple suppressed rounds from his rifle. Within seconds, Becker, Baker, and Emmenheiser were struck. Another detective and the deputy sheriff returned fire as Ruth turned his weapons on them. Both men were hit in the exchange but managed to fight back. The gunfire moved toward the roadway where Ruth was ultimately shot and killed. When the shooting ended, officers rushed to render aid, but Becker, Baker, and Emmenheiser did not survive. Investigators later found the ex-girlfriend's mother's dog shot dead in the basement. York County District Attorney Tim Barker said the evidence so far indicates that had Ruth's ex-girlfriend or her mother gone to the farmhouse instead of police, they, quote, would have been killed immediately. Ruth had recently been charged with stalking, trespassing, loitering, and prowling at night. Officials said he had no prior criminal convictions, but described the violence as rooted in, quote, the hateful scourge of domestic violence. The Pennsylvania State Police have now convened a major case team to handle the investigation. Colonel Christopher Parish called the killings, quote, unbearable grief for the community, and asked the public to keep the families of the fallen and wounded officers in their thoughts. Representatives from Washington's Chelan County Sheriff's Office say that they believe a months-long manhunt has finally come to an end this week after the suspected remains of a man wanted for the murders of his own 3 young daughters were finally located. If you've been following crime news at all in the past few months, chances are you already know exactly what we're talking about. But just in case you don't, here's a quick refresher. The situation began on the afternoon of May 30th when the man in question, 32-year-old Travis Decker, picked up his 3 daughters from their home in the city of Wenatchee. The girls, 9-year-old Peyton, 8-year-old Evelyn, and 5-year-old Olivia, lived with their mother, Whitney, full-time. She had been granted sole custody of the children since her divorce with Travis back in 2022. However, as part of a court-ordered parenting plan, Travis was allowed to spend several hours visiting with his daughters every other weekend. Travis picked up the girls around 5 p.m. that day, and as part of the pre-arranged visit, was supposed to have them back by 8 o'clock. However, he and the kids never returned. To Whitney's horror, she also wasn't able to reach her ex-husband on his cell phone. Right away, there were concerns for the safety of the children. Though Travis had never harmed his daughters or violated his visitation terms before, he suffered from borderline personality disorder, as well as PTSD from his time serving in the Army. He also had no fixed address, making it difficult to know where he might be. Still, no one was prepared for what happened next. After a search was launched, Travis's white 2017 GMC Sierra pickup truck was spotted abandoned near the Rock Island campground outside the town of Leavenworth. Inside the vehicle, police found food, blankets, a wallet, and car seats belonging to the missing girls. Chillingly, 2 bloody handprints were also smeared on the back of the truck. Sadly, things would only get worse though. On June 2nd, almost exactly 72 hours after all of this began, authorities located the bodies of Paitlin, Evelyn, and Olivia. The girls were found in an embankment close to the abandoned pickup truck. Their wrists were zip-tied, and plastic bags were covering their heads. It was later revealed that they had likely died of asphyxiation. However, Travis Decker was nowhere to be found. The hunt for Travis lasted all throughout the summer, with a steady drip of reporting revealing new details and minor updates about the case. Most of these had to do with alleged sightings of the 32-year-old, who police believed might have been hiding out in the wilderness. Due to his extensive military training, it was thought that Travis might have been able to survive off-grid indefinitely, though searches also extended as far north as Canada and as far south as Mexico. Throughout the last few months, there have been many false alarms, witness sightings that turned out not to be Travis, as well as possible recoveries that were actually dead ends. As recently as 2 weeks ago, authorities had announced the possible recovery of remains, only for those to later be determined to be animal bones. However, investigators now believe they have finally found the breakthrough they've been looking for. This week, they revealed that AI-powered drones had detected an anomaly while searching a virtually uninhabitable area of Grindstone Mountain in a thick section of trees. When officers made their way to the area, which was apparently quite difficult, they found a large amount of human remains. The remains were reportedly in an advanced state of decomposition and included femurs, 2 feet, and several vertebrae. Police also say they found several items belonging to Travis, including the shirt he was last seen wearing prior to the crime, a pair of Army Ranger shorts, a bracelet he was known to wear, and his favorite brand of chewing tobacco. So far, a positive identification still has not been made, though police appear confident that these are Travis's remains. DNA is currently being tested, and definitive answers should follow. The site of the discovery was less than a mile from where the bodies of the 3 young victims were found back in June, leading many to ask why it took so long for Travis to be found. Police have stated the area was incredibly difficult to search, with Chief Deputy U.S. Marshal Gavin Duffy stating during a press conference this week, quote, "The terrain is extremely complex, some of which is hard to find anywhere in this country. That's what we found. It's incredibly steep, it's incredibly rocky." At the time of this recording, there was a lot of work still to be done on the case, and even if Travis's remains are successfully identified, many questions still remain. We can only hope that as the investigation continues, the friends and family of Paitlin, Evelyn, and Olivia can begin to get the answers they deserve. Hey there. Before you take off, we'd just like to take a second and say that we really appreciate you sticking around to the end of the video. Luke and I are so grateful for our incredible Crime Zone community, so thank you for being a part of it. If you want to help Crime Zone continue to grow, one of the easiest things you can do is leave a like on this video and consider subscribing. Be sure to hit that notification bell as well and select all notifications to stay up to date with our latest releases. If you're looking for additional ways to support the channel, there are a couple of options. We've got a thriving community over on Patreon, where you can get ad-free and early access to all of our content, as well as 4 additional stories per week for each of our Crimes of the Week and Crimes of the Week International videos. Head over to patreon.com/crimezone to learn more and to meet some of the awesome people whose names are currently on screen. If that isn't your thing, we've also now launched channel memberships so you can join directly here on YouTube. Channel members get a lot of the same perks as on Patreon, including extra content, without the added hassle of having to go off-platform. Now, that being said, we know times are tough and that not everyone is able to support financially. Regardless of your situation though, we want you to know that we truly appreciate every like, sub, share, and comment that you send our way. Once again, thanks so much, and we hope to see you soon.